Over the next several days, we are going to be looking specifically at congruent triangles. A big part of this unit would typically be to do what are called proofs. Lucky for you, we don't need to spend time doing that with this virtual learning. So I'm really just going to hit the definition of congruent triangles, and there are 5 ways that we can prove them, and you're going to need to recognize those patterns. All right, so today, just to get started, you guys know congruent, that word means that things have equal measures. So if we have congruent figures, and specifically we're just focusing on triangles, but other shapes can also be congruent. All right, these then are figures or triangles that will have the same shape and will be the exact same size. Now you will see this little acronym, CPCTC, and what it stands for is corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, right? So if you are given what's called a congruency statement, so basically you're going to know that triangle something is congruent to a second triangle something. How the letters are written tells you exactly how things match up. So the first letter, which would represent angle Q, goes with angle Y, all right? Put 2 together, you get a side. So side QR would match and be congruent to side YZ, all right? So this congruency statement is most important, more important than a picture is, right? So since we know that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, let's start with the corresponding angles. So just by looking at my pattern, I know that angle Q will be congruent to angle Y. Those are the first letters named, so they go together. The middle one, so we got angle R will be congruent to angle Z. And then we've got angle P will be congruent to angle X. Now let's go to our picture, all right? Because on a picture, if you're not given a congruency statement, you need to look at your picture and identify how things are marked. So you would have angle Q would be exactly marked the same as angle Y. So you would know those pair together. And then R and Z. Now we already did one arc, so we would have to use something different. So I'll do a double arc in angles R and Z. Another way would be to do arcs with tick marks. So let's do that for the last one. So angle P, I'll do one arc with a tick mark, goes with angle X. So we'll do an arc with a tick mark. All right, so if you don't have the congruency statement, but you have a picture, just look at how the angles are marked congruent. We also have congruent sides. So we're going to put 2 letters together. So side QR, and we want to put the bar because it's the name, right, is congruent, and then put YZ. Second and third, so side RP, I know is going to be congruent to side ZX. And then the first and third go together. So side QP will be congruent to side YX. So with every congruency statement, we get 3 angle pairs, 3 side pairs, 6 total parts. Now, how do we mark the sides? We're going to do tick marks. So if I put 1 tick mark on QR, then I better see 1 Q mark on YZ. So now I have to do something different. So I'll do 2 tick marks on RP and 2 on XZ. And then we'll do 3 and 3 on the last pair. Okay. Now, you'll know you also, something just to check as we progress, all right, when you see like 1 arc and an arc with a tick mark, and there's 3 tick marks between, just make sure that's the way over here with the single and the single with the tick mark, that the side with 3 is the one that's in between, all right? That way you know things are marked right. So what kind of problems are you going to be asked to do today? Well, the first type is simply what we just did. We're going to list all the congruent angles and sides simply from this statement. There's no picture. So you're going to tell me angle B is congruent to angle M, because those are the first ones named. And then angle C will be congruent to angle N, and angle D is congruent to angle K. Again, notice we're not doing measures, we're not talking about numbers, we're talking about parts. So there's no M for measure of angle, and we're using the congruent symbol. So with the sides, we're going to name the part. So we've got side BC will be congruent to side MN. Those are my first and second letters. Then we'll do second and third. So side CD is congruent to side NK. And then first and third, so side BD is congruent to side MK. All right. Now, number 2 wants me to write just another valid congruency statement for these triangles. So pick a different order for that first triangle. So instead of BCD, what if I do DBC? All right, well then I have to name the second triangle. So if D is now first, but it was third here, then I go find the third. So that means K will go in front because D and K still need to go together. B went with M and C went with N. So that's just another valid congruency statement. All right, example 3. So we're told the triangles are congruent and this is how they match up, and we want to find the values of X, Y, and Z. All right, notice these are all sides. They could be angles, and you will see problems in your practice with angles instead. So let's look. So side UV, which is my first and second, is the same as side TS. So right there, I know that 12x minus 7 is going to equal the 53. All right, let's go ahead and solve for x. So we'll add 7. 12x equals 60, so x is 5. That one's done. All right, the next side, VW, is going to go with SR. So I know that 57 is going to equal 5y minus 33. So now I can solve for y. So I'll add 33. So we get 90 equals 5y. And then when I divide by 5, I get 118. And then obviously UW is going to go with TR. So we've got 3z plus 14 equals 50. So subtract 14. And we get 36. Divide by 3, we'll get z to be 12. All right, so just use your pattern and make sure you know which sides are congruent to which sides. Write your equations. Here we go. All right, the last thing we're going to do today is, as I said, there are 5 ways to prove triangles congruent. So we're not going to do the official proof, but what I need you to be able to do is recognize these patterns. Now we're just going to talk about 3 of them today. All right, and the first 3 ways are the postulates. All right, some of these are postulates, and the 2 that we're going to cover tomorrow are the theorems. So what you're looking for, triangles can be congruent by not SSS. All right, that's how we write it, but we actually say side, side, side. All right, so what our picture should look like is that 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another. So you might see single tick marks there, the double, and then the triple. So when you're looking at 2 triangles and those are the parts marked, that would be your side, side, side postulate in use. All right, side, the A stands for angle, so side, angle, side. So what we're looking for are 2 sides, and this is the key word here, and the included angle. Notice the placement of the A, it's between the 2 sides. So if I mark that side pair, and then I mark this side pair, then the angle that's included or between must be the angle that we see as congruent also. All right, so you see a side, angle, side pattern. All right, angle, side, angle. So this time we've got two angles and then an included side. All right, so let's just mark two angle pairs. Let's mark this one. It's one. And then we'll mark this top one. So the side that must be marked congruent is the one that's between them. So we have this angle, side, angle pattern. All right, so again, these are all postulates, and these are the first three of the pattern. So I'm just going to have you practice and focus on those today. Now, make sure we understand that some patterns don't work. All right, angle, angle, angle does not work. All right, an easy example would be to do equilateral triangles, right? We know that these are all 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 60. But guess what? Those are not congruent to each other. So having three angle measures the same does not make congruent triangles. The other one that doesn't work is side, side angle. This spells a bad word backwards, and it should always be written backwards if for some reason it's shown on your paper. All right, side, side angle. And we'll talk more about that one tomorrow as well. But if you see either of these, angle, 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 or side, side angle, you cannot prove triangles congruent. Now, the other thing we need to know is that sometimes the way our triangles are drawn, you might not see three parts marked. They might only show two. So there's some what we call free information. Vertical angles, we know vertical angles are always congruent. So if in your triangle drawings, if they are drawn so that you have vertical angles, that is automatically one pair of congruent parts that we can mark. The other thing, if you don't see three parts, will be if they share a side, like this. And if they do, then we can mark that side as a congruent part because it will be the same in the left triangle as it is in the right triangle. Okay, let's do some examples. All right, so it's asking which postulate, if any, should be used to show the triangles congruent. So we're looking for, and again, we're looking for the same patterns. All right, so notice we've got 1 and 2 tick marks, and then we both have the angle that's included. So this is what I suggest you do, is say, okay, I've got two sides, so put down your two S's, and then the angle is the one that's between them. And then that gives you your pattern. So we've got a side angle side. Now this is a postulate. All of these are postulates, but I want you to get in the habit of writing whether it's a postulate or theorem afterwards. So just write postulate after all your answers today, if there is one. All right, number 2, when we look at this, I see I've got two angle pairs. So I'm going to put down the two A's, and the side that's marked is the one that's included. So angle, side, angle, and that's a postulate. All right, so notice here we've got 1 and 2 tick marks, and then we've got an angle between. But then we also have this angle out here. So let's start with the two sides. If I've got the two sides, I do have the angle that's between. So side angle side postulate works. But then they also gave us two angle pairs. And the side between them is marked. So there's two patterns that we could use to prove number 3. All right, number 4. Now notice in each triangle, there's only 2 angles marked. There's not a third part, but I notice they share a side. So that's what I call free information. I get to mark that with a tick mark. So now when I write down the two A's, the side that I marked is the one that's included. So that would be angle, side, angle, postulate. Number 5, hopefully that one's pretty simple. We got 3 sides marked. So that's side, side, side. Number 6, they've got 3 angles marked. That's angle, angle, angle. But we talked, that's not a good pattern. So we're going to just cross it out, and we're going to put not congruent. All right, not enough information there. Okay, number 7, again, I see the right angle. So instead of them using arcs, they're using the box. So we've got, but we know those are congruent, right? So we've got right angles. We also have a side, but I don't have a third part. So they share a side. So there it is. So now I see I've got 2 sides. So I put down my 2 S's. And then that box, the angle that they gave us is the one included. So that's a side, angle, side. Number 8, we've got 2 things marked. So we need a third, but they do not share an entire side. So we can't mark that. And they don't have vertical angles. So there's not enough information here. These are not going to be congruent. Number 9, we got 3 side marks on each one. So that's your side, side, side postulate. Number 10, all right, so we've got 2 sides in both and an angle. So if I put down the 2 S's, now notice this time the angle that they gave me is not the one that's included. All right, it's not the one that's made by those 2 sides. So the A would go out here. Well, that's a bad word, but spelled backwards. So we cross that off and say these are not congruent. Number 11, I only see 2 congruent parts, so they do share a side. All right, so I can mark it. So now I've got 3 sides, side, side, side is my reason. Number 12, they've got 2 angle marks, 2 angles over here. So I put down the 2 A's and the side is the one that's included. So that's angle, side, angle. 13, again, we've got 2 angle pairs and they share a side. So that's going to give me, put the 2 A's down and the side is the one included. So angle, side, angle, postulate. All right, 14. They only gave me 2 congruent parts. The triangles aren't touching. They're not sharing a side, no vertical angles. So there's not enough information there. So these are not congruent. And then 15, again, only 2 congruent parts are marked. This one has vertical angles. So I'm going to mark those congruent. So now I've got my 3 parts. So I put down the 2 sides they gave me, and the angle is the one that's included. All right, that was a lot of examples, but hopefully as we went through, if I was going too fast, just pause me and back up and watch again. Now this last part says we want to know if the triangles are congruent. For 16, it says we know that QP is congruent to MN. So what else must we know to use angle, side, angle? Well, if we only know this one angle pair, I hesitate marking, but I have another problem. But if that's the S, the side, then obviously angle Q has to be congruent to angle M, right? We need to have that angle pair. And then we would need to have angle P congruent to angle N in order to get an angle, side, angle pattern. Now I'm just going to redraw those so I can write on this picture too. So in the second one, they give us that angle R is congruent to angle K. This time we want a side angle side pattern. So I'm going to need the sides on the left. So that's side QR congruent to side MK. And I'm going to need the sides on the right. So side RP will have to be congruent to side KN. All right, mark the pictures so that you can see the pattern. Okay, all right, so we're talking just about congruency in general with the congruent statements and patterns, and you're looking at these 3 patterns, side, 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 angle, side, and angle, side, angle to do your practice.